Hello, and thank you for joining me today. My name is Joshua Gordon, and I'm a data scientist here at dotData. At dotData, our core mission is simple but critical. We find what others miss. Today, we are diving deep into the high stakes world of fraud in auto lending. Specifically, we're going to explore a major transition the industry is undergoing: the shift from static, point in time checks to true AI driven behavioral pattern recognition. This session is designed for lenders who already have a fraud stack in place, perhaps a very robust one, but still face unexplained losses and evolving threats that traditional tools weren't built to detect. We're going to look at why that's happening and how the landscape of risk is fundamentally shifting beneath our feet. We have a comprehensive agenda today designed to move us from the what to the how of modern fraud detection. We'll start by looking at the scale of the current fraud crisis, the sheer dollar volume of the problem, and why it's accelerating so rapidly. Then, we'll move into the core of the presentation: the four fraud horsemen. These are the recurring behavioral patterns that dominate auto loan portfolios today. After we define those threats, we'll analyze the blind spots, the three fatal flaws in legacy systems that allow these patterns to slip through unnoticed. Finally, I'll walk you through the paradigm shift of AI powered discovery and provide a practical, four-phase roadmap for your institution to follow. Let's start by looking at some eye opening numbers. According to 2025 data from Point Predictive, auto lending fraud losses reached $9.2 billion in 2024 alone. That represents a 16.5% increase in just a single year. To put that in perspective, auto loan fraud losses are now roughly 21 times higher than credit card fraud. We aren't just talking about a few missed payments here and there. We are talking about systemic risk to the business. Consider the case of Tricolor Holdings. As reported by Point Predictive, Tricolor Holdings, once a major player in subprime auto lending, filed for bankruptcy in late 2025 following revelations of a multi-million-dollar fraud. The scheme left its creditors, including Fifth Third Bancorp, facing losses exceeding $200 million. This is the growing threat of auto loan fraud that we are all navigating. This crisis is escalating rapidly because the nature of the threat has fundamentally changed. According to Point Predictive, third-party identity theft, where someone steals a wallet or a single set of credentials, is no longer the primary threat to your portfolio. Instead, first-party fraud has become the dominant risk. This is fraud committed by applicants who, on the surface, pass every traditional identity check by using parts of their own real data or carefully crafted credentials. Unfortunately, most lenders still rely on safeguards designed for a fraud landscape from 5 or 10 years ago, leaving them exposed to new, more sophisticated tactics. Across diverse portfolios, we find that nearly all large-scale fraud losses fall into four recurring categories. I call these the four fraud horsemen of your portfolio. Understanding the four horsemen isn't just about naming the crime. It's about understanding the specific patient behaviors that fraudsters use to bypass your current defenses. The first horseman is synthetic identity fraud, arguably the most complex. Based on 2025 data from Equifax, synthetic identities are now part of 50 to 70% of all credit fraud losses. These are often called Frankenstein identities because they combine a real, valid social security number, often belonging to a child or someone who doesn't use credit, with false personal information. What makes this so dangerous is the patience involved. Equifax notes that these profiles are often cured over 12 to 18 months, slowly building what appears to be a perfect, legitimate credit history. When fraudsters finally apply for a loan, their synthetic identities look exactly like a thin file applicant. Because there is no actual consumer victim to report the theft, these losses are almost always misclassified as standard credit losses rather than fraud. The second pattern is the straw borrower scheme. According to reports in Auto Finance News, this scheme involves a borrower with good credit fronting for an unqualified buyer who would never pass your underwriting on their own. This scheme is designed to bypass the traditional credit checks you have in place. On paper, you are underwriting a low-risk profile, but in reality, that is a ghost profile. The person actually driving the car away is the high-risk individual you never saw coming. Organized rings do this at scale. Auto finance news highlights a California case where a ring of 21 people used 54 shell companies to cause over $5 million in losses to auto lenders. Our third horseman is income misrepresentation, and by pure dollar volume, it is the largest category. According to 2025 data from Point Predictive, this represents roughly $3.9 billion in financial exposure, accounting for 42% of total fraud. The scale is massive. More than 10,000 fictitious employers are currently linked to more than $3 billion in fraudulent applications. Further research from AFSA and Experian shows that roughly 1 in 5 submitted pay stubs is false. Why is this happening? VantageScore reports that the average car payment is now over $750, and delinquencies have risen by more than 50% over the past 15 years. This economic pressure, combined with easy access to professional document forgery, has made income fraud a go-to tactic. The final horseman is the intentional skip and the early payment default, or EPD. According to Point Predictive, 70% of early payment defaults show fraud signals that were already present in the original application. These defaults have increased by 25% since 2022. This highlights a significant communication gap within institutions. Your collections teams see the problem clearly when the card disappears, but your underwriting systems consistently miss the signals during the application process. This brings us to a critical question. Why do these patterns keep getting through your existing software stack? It's not for a lack of effort. The challenge is that most legacy systems are built on a foundation with 3 critical gaps. These gaps exist not because legacy systems are bad at what they do, but simply because they were not designed to see the whole picture. First, legacy systems are ideal for point-in-time analysis. They're not designed to identify slow, nuanced processes. Second, static rules are by definition reactive. They only become better once you've learned of new rules that you need to add. But that only happens after you've lost money. Finally, most legacy systems are designed to use widely available data, but some of the most valuable signals for analysis are in data you own and only you can access. Let's look at each in more detail. The first flaw is the static rules engine trap. Static rules are, by definition, reactive. You typically only create a new rule after you've already lost money. Fraudsters know this. They probe your systems for weaknesses, learn your rules, and then engineer their applications to bypass them. Furthermore, when you tighten these rules, you often increase false positives, creating friction for your legitimate customers. Maintaining these rules is an expensive, slow, and manual process that simply can't keep up with the speed of modern fraud. The second gap of legacy systems is an over-reliance on point-in-time analysis. In most traditional fraud stacks, the system looks at an application as a single isolated snapshot in time. It asks, is the data valid? However, according to dotData internal research, the most powerful and predictive fraud signals don't reside in a single data point. They lie in the spaces between points over time. Think of it this way. A single application might look perfectly legitimate on its own. But what if we could see that the exact same device ID has been used to submit 10 unrelated applications in the span of a single week? That is a massive red flag for organized fraud, yet a point-in-time check misses that connection entirely because it isn't examining the data's trajectory. This snapshot approach is exactly how slow, patient, and evolving fraud schemes, such as the synthetic identities we discussed earlier, bypass your frontline defenses. We have to stop looking at static photos and start looking at the whole movie. The downstream effect of these flaws is what I call the poison data well. Because fraudulent defaults are so often misclassified as standard credit losses, your data becomes fundamentally flawed. You end up training your risk models to accept fraudulent behavior as normal or acceptable risk. Every time a fraudulent loan goes undetected, your models become slightly weaker, leading to a gradual degradation of your overall risk posture. You are essentially training tomorrow's models on today's undetected fraud, leaving you permanently exposed. So how do we improve our defenses? The breakthrough is AI-powered signal discovery. This technology allows us to automatically discover thousands of data signals across all the information you have access to, including credit bureaus, internal data, and permissioned third-party sources. We move from single-dimensional data points, such as a FICO score of 640, to behavioral signals, such as the rate of change in a FICO score over a defined period. This allows us to spot the Frankenstein profiles that look good on paper but have impossible behavioral trajectories. We need a paradigm shift in how we approach risk. We need to move beyond the simple binary question: is this data point valid? Instead, we must ask, what is the pattern of behavior across all my data, and how does it compare to millions of other patterns? This is the move from simple document validation to a true understanding of borrower intent. When we apply this type of AI discovery, we find the strongest fraud signals consistently fall into four categories. First, velocity. How quickly are accounts opening? Or is a bot generating inquiries faster than a human could? Second, timing anomalies. Are we seeing trade line activity at 3 a.m. or on unusual days? Third, bust out flags. What is the specific interval between account opening and the very last payment? And finally, relational signals. Are we seeing shared device IDs or common email domains across seemingly unrelated application clusters? When you move away from static scores and toward AI powered discovery, you find that the strongest indicators of fraud aren't single data points, they are behavioral clusters. These signals consistently fall into four high impact categories: velocity, timing, bust out flags, and relational patterns. First, look at velocity. This isn't just about how many apps someone submits, it's about the smallest intervals between account openings. Look for a high rate of inquiry generation that mimics automated bot behavior rather than a human consumer's natural shopping cycle. Second, analyze timing anomalies. Most legitimate consumers apply for car loans during business hours, but fraudsters often work through the night. Look for trade line activity during unusual hours or specific day of the week patterns that deviate from typical consumer behavior. Third are bust out flags. These are signals that predict an applicant's intent to max out and move out. Measure the time elapsed between account opening and the final payment before default. Also, track the concentration of high risk inquiry types that often precede a total skip. Finally, look at relational signals. This is where we break the silos. Look for shared device IDs being used across seemingly unrelated applications. Also, track common email domains and phone prefixes used by different applicant clusters, which often indicate a coordinated crime ring rather than an individual actor. The key is discovering critical signals of problem behavior, patterns that are early warnings. Individually, each of these signals show modest lift, but when combined, they reveal a powerful microsegment. These segments might only represent 1 or 2% of your volume, but they can have fraud rates 10, 50, or even 100 times higher than your baseline. This allows you to target interventions exactly where they are needed without bothering the 98% of your customers who are legitimate. Transforming your fraud detection happens in 4 practical phases. The journey toward modernizing your fraud detection begins with phase 1, unifying your data foundation. Many lenders are sitting on a goldmine of information, a wealth of in-house permission-based data, yet they continue to rely on the exact same generic datasets as their competitors to manage risk. To break away from the pack, you must establish a single source of truth. This isn't just a technical task, it is about data quality and governance. You need to leverage all your available tools to maintain consistent, high-quality data across the enterprise. This means moving your fragmented datasets into a single, unified repository, such as a data lake, to provide a complete 360-degree view of your portfolio activities. By combining external bureau data with your unique in-house sources, you create a foundation that is far more predictive than any off-the-shelf solution. Without this unified foundation, even the most advanced AI will only ever see a partial, distorted picture of the risk you face. Once your data is unified, we move to phase 2, automating signal discovery. In the legacy world, fraud detection relies on manual hypotheses. human analysts guessing which variables might matter and testing them one by one. That approach is too slow for today's fraudsters. Phase 2 focuses on establishing a systematic pattern of exploration. We use AI to discover and analyze millions of potential behavioral signals across all your connected data simultaneously. The goal is to enable the AI to automatically surface the most powerful signals, identifying connections a human analyst might not consider. Instead of relying on a handful of static rules, you are now powered by thousands of dynamic behavioral features that adapt to the data. This phase is the engine of the entire transformation. It turns your unified data lake into a fountain of actionable intelligence, allowing you to spot the four horsemen the moment they appear in your application stream. As we move into the execution phase of your roadmap, phase 3 focuses on a hard truth in the industry. Fraudsters are agile and evolve faster than traditional software updates. According to dotData's methodology, static models are essentially dying models from the moment they are deployed. This is why continuous monitoring and retraining is absolutely non negotiable. We move away from the set it and forget it mentality and instead establish feature leaderboards to continuously detect drift. That subtle shift in which once reliable data points begin to lose their predictive power. To stay ahead, you must run automated feature discovery on every new data cohort, whether that is on a monthly or quarterly basis. By retraining your models with these newly discovered behavioral signals, you can stay one step ahead of the fraudsters. This proactive approach allows you to adapt your business practices and knockout rules before your portfolio performance starts to degrade, turning your fraud detection into a living, breathing defense system. Finally, we reach phase 4, which is perhaps the most challenging but also the most rewarding, breaking the silos. As our roadmap to success highlights, technology alone cannot solve a problem that is often rooted in departmental isolation. You must bridge the gap between your origination flags and your collections outcomes. When these two ends of the loan life cycle finally talk to each other, you create a powerful feedback loop that allows your underwriting team to learn from the intentional skips that the collections team is seeing on the ground. This phase also involves expanding your gaze to include dealer oversight. By using AI to monitor dealer programs, you can quickly spot repeat offenders or unusual clusters of high risk applications before they scale. Ultimately, this is about culture. By training your frontline staff on these evolving AI discovered patterns, you empower them to act as a human firewall. When your data, your departments, and your people are all connected, you transform your entire organization into a shield that fraudsters simply cannot penetrate. In closing, the $9.2 billion fraud crisis is not slowing down, it is accelerating. As Point Predictive and Experian data show, fraudsters are already using AI. You must use it as well. Your business is built on trust, but your current tools are only solving part of the problem. Safe loans are not always as safe as they seem. The real opportunity here is to transform fraud detection from a cost center into a competitive edge through better risk pricing. It is not a question of whether this is necessary, but whether you will lead or be left behind. Fraudsters are not waiting, and neither can you. At dotData, we solve problems like these, as well as the discovery of drivers of defaults, pricing misalignments, and much more. Schedule some time with us to explore our technology on your own portfolio. Thank you for your time.